is Monday night, Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning. Boy, around the world in so many days. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfein. This is TMS RoundTable Global, and we are all over the globe, and we are excited. Rose, I love you. I love Monday nights. I'm so happy Michael Galinsky introduced us. You're my best friend.
Lovely. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're actually having two guests. Dr. Rosett has spent many years actually helping people that have discovered that they've got TMS, or somatic pain. And in his little Facebook page, which, you know, I'm not very good at actually following, but my friend Tova is excellent at that. And
your best friend Tova. Your best friend Tova.
That's right. Yes. And Michael, of course, brought us together. So thank you. And also, you know, Michael has been doing his bit all these years to help people understand that their somatic pain is about their feelings, about how they're coping in the world. And with his movie, All the Rage, he's actually brought a first-person perspective to that and brought it into the actual here and now, rather than having experts out there. So anyone who hasn't watched it, please do so. And also, if you're on the edge, follow Matthew's page. He will share with us something of how he got this page together. He's actually a hypnotherapist and works in this area as well. Thank you both for sharing your time with us and our audience. Matthew, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. I started on this journey. Probably I've had psychosomatic symptoms probably most of my life. I first hurt my back when I was 16 lifting a lawnmower, and you know, Robaxin, aspirin, that was the prescription. Shortly after that, I became an EMT and then a paramedic, and because of that, I was in and out of emergency rooms. If you had back pain, you just said to the doctor, "Hey, I got back pain." Oh, and they didn't even examine you, or they just said, "Here," and they would give you anti-inflammatories or pain pills or whatever. And I just thought that was the way to go. And I spent, till about 1982, when I was 22 or 83, in that belief system. And then I coughed walking on a subway platform. And it was, you know, the sledgehammer in the back kind of feeling, wow, which led me down the sciatica path. Now, understand, in 1982, 83, I am working at a Bellevue at 26th and First Avenue. Dr. Sarno was at 34th and First Avenue.
Oh my goodness. Okay. the Bellevue Hotel?
Bellevue Hospital.
Yeah, it's just
I was within walking distance of his office and didn't know he existed. That was 82-ish, 83-ish. It wasn't until 2003 when I was flat on my back after my second injection, herniated disc, all the diagnoses, that I was reading Mindbody prescription and going, "Oh, this guy is so full of shit."
Wait,
and then
who gave it to you? Who gave it to you? And did you throw the book across the room? Oh no.
Don't, you know, one of those books, the universe just, you know, dropped it on my desk. I still don't know how I got that book. But my back started to feel better. Wow. After a year of being a lot better, not completely better, and it leveled off, I was like, you know, maybe this guy would see me. And I pick up the book, I look him up, and I call his office.
He answers his phone.
And they said, "Come on in." You know, well, he interviewed me first. You know, he had criteria. And I went to see him, and he diagnosed me. And that was in 2004, that was the turning point for me. The back pain went away. I went to his program. I would go into the city every few weeks. And then
wait. On Monday nights, you would go to his Monday night lecture?
Yeah. Wow. I went to his lectures, and then he would have this auditorium thing where he would have 4 prior patients who would share their stories. And then there'd be a bunch of people in the auditorium. They could ask them questions. And, you know, I did that. Like I said, a year later, I'm doing very well, get up out of bed, fall to the floor with vertigo. So I did what Dr. Sarno said. I went to the doctor, ruled out the physical, and then I called him up. And he said, "Matthew, you have more work to do." Sent me to Dr. Bob Evans, one of his trained counselors, who was just, I teach a lot of what he taught me 20 years.
Well, how different was it than what Sarno was teaching? How different was it?
Well, he took John Sarno's work to another level. Dr. Sarno didn't have a psych degree. He did have a psych background. But also Dr. Sarno stuck with TMS. And as we know, TMS is non-harmful. It is a subset of all mind-body issues. Dr. Sarno chose not to treat the others, not because he couldn't, he just didn't. It was his choice. Dr. Schechter talks about that. So Dr. Evans has had a huge number of tools in his box. He turned me on to Peter Levine's somatic experiencing. He turned me on to Sue Johnson's emotionally focused therapy, onto energy work, onto Reiki, onto yoga. You know, there were so many other aspects he brought into it. And that started me on the path of thinking differently, of understanding. And this was before, understand something. I've been in this a long time. This is long before we had these great pain studies. This is long before the studies that had been done in fMRI were really being, looked at, and someone was going, Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin was doing this stuff in the 90s, but it wasn't really tied to the TMS world. So that started me on a new path. I saw Dr. Evans for a number of years. And then I realized also that, I could help other people. I got involved in the TMS wiki when it was the wet paint page, when Rob started that in 08 or 09. And then in about the 2012 timeframe, I realized I could help other people. And I was offering just myself as peer assistance. And things are getting better.
Was Michael this was what? Where does Michael Galinsky come into your timeline? Or he's not here yet?
We're going to have to talk about that because Michael, I think me and Michael probably met on the TMS wiki or one of the Facebook pages, but there wasn't a lot of that stuff in those days. Right. TMS wet paint was like Rob's brainchild, brand new. I think you've had Rob Munger on. Yeah. You will again. Yeah. He's does a lot with the PPD. Still right. TMS wiki. But then I saw I could help other people. And I just did some peer coaching. I said, hey, if you want some help, I'll help you. No charge, no. And I was having fun with that. In 2008, I had a severe back pain episode. That was that was the one where I was like, I've had enough of this. And
after all that work you did,
05 to 08, I like 10 on a scale of 10 back pain again.
Wow.
Like for 6 months. And this one, I'd gone to the doctor. He gave me a big bottle of Percocet. I was taking 7 10-milligram Percocets a day, if you can imagine.
Oh my gosh.
And I called Dr. Sarno and he said, send me your MRI. And I sent him the MRI. And he calls me up and he says, your MRI is the same as it was 4 years ago.
Oh my God.
You have more work to do. So my doctor sent me to a pain management guy just so we could, because he didn't want me on all that Percocet. So we could manage the pain so I could see Dr. Evans twice a week. And they actually had me on a fentanyl patch for about 5 or 6 months.
Oh my God.
Yes. So I could be clear-headed enough to do the real work. And the pain management guy was fascinated. He was like, wow, this explains fibromyalgia. And I said, yeah, it does. So, and then, I've met a lot of people over the years. Michael, when did we meet?
I mean, we met in person at our screening when you came to do the
in the city
Q&A with me. Yeah. But we were probably talking. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking before that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember.
But how'd you guys meet? Michael Galinsky, were you on Wiki? Did you used to go on Wiki like as a patient?
I mean, just a little to try and find stuff, but this was before there were all these Facebook pages, and each of those Facebook pages has their own kind of community, and and I would like to bring it back to that because I think you do a really good job of kind of connecting with people and kind of gently steering people back towards, well, like you're talking a lot about your symptoms. That's not that useful. Let's get to what's going on in your body, and then each of the different pages. There's so many of them now. I see like
can't
okay,
keep
a post
up,
came up now. No, and you also shouldn't try to keep up. You should let the seeds go forth and do their work.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge because there's so many pages. And I see a lot of patients, page hop. That's like they doctor hop.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for that instant. One of the things Dr. Sarno said that has been hugely misinterpreted was, I see a lot of people read my book and get better. And he was just making a comment on an observation, and people take that as, oh, I'm not good enough, of course, because I'm not better after reading the book, realizing that there's a huge range of healing times from I've seen people with a few months to people like me who I've been working on this 18 years and I'm probably 95 or 90% better, but it's not gone. I don't think it really goes away. I think it depends on who we are, what stresses
it's a terrible,
what our personalities.
It's a terrible disease called
To
being
be
human.
human.
It's going to kill you. Right? It's the worst disease you can get, and if you only get over it when it gets you. There's really no way to not have mind-body symptoms in your body. That's what it is to be alive, right? And it's
I agree
how
with
much
you.
you think you.
Just to honor this guy's statement. Hi, Brajesh. I don't know you, but welcome. I think the less you know, the faster you heal. We can discuss that.
Well,
very good.
You should have Brajesh on, by the way, because he does the Zero Pain Now process, and he had a real big struggle, many years of pain, and he was one of the guys that has healed fairly quickly, as well as he's a practitioner. So I'll give him a little. I just actually reviewed his most recent book, so
Wow.
He's a good egg. He's got a lot of experience, and a lot of success.
I think what Brajesh, which is a beautiful name, I think what's important is not like it's a general statement, the less you know, the faster you heal. It's the fact is each individual person needs to be responsible for what's going on here, and that is balanced with what's going on in the heart and stuff like that.
I think what he's I think what he's getting at actually though is that when you're information seeking, you're no longer inside seeking. So the more you know, it means it's the less you're going to be actually paying attention to yourself. Yeah. So it's like that's something that we faced when making the movie, which is that people wanted more information. So we put in more information, but that only made them want more information. So we had to take out all the information because the information is actually a distraction from the very, very simple truth that your mind and body are interacting. And that takes work to unravel. Yeah.
Yes. It's called intellectualizing.
Yes, and I'm still getting feedback from people that watch the movie. I'm not getting what I need in this movie. I'm not getting any methods. I need more methodology.
I want tools.
Well, the other thing is those tools can get in our way too. It's like a spiritual bypass. We can get so hung up, and I'm doing this today, I'm doing this today, I'm doing this today, that we're completely missing the fact that we're not feeling. And that's the key we all agree with. When we feel our emotions, we have less symptoms. It's that simple and that complicated.
Yeah. And we've got more emotional power to deal with our daily lives.
Yes. And this is one of the ways that I find hypnosis works well is, and the hypnosis I do is heart-centered hypnosis. It's a little bit different in that a lot of people think about the quacking like the duck and on stage and all that stuff, which is stage hypnosis. I use hypnosis to help people get down into the subconscious where this stuff exists. Because when we get down there, I can go back to, oh, I was 5 and this happened to me. And my experience was this. And then I created a belief system. I'm not good enough. I'm not loved, to support that experience because I was 3 or 5 and I didn't have any more capability than that. That's what I came up with. And then we create a behavior to support that belief. Oh, I'll be perfect and good. I'll be very quiet. I'll save mommy.
So I want you to address Esther. Esther asked a question early in the broadcast. Maybe you and Michael and Rose probably will have something to say. What can she learn? What are her take-home tools and insights in this hour that she can apply to her life? Because it's really about knowing and applying.
That exactly hits where I'm talking about. I didn't use the word trauma. I don't like the word trauma because it's becoming a buzzword like PTSD or bipolar, or pick a word that defines a set of symptoms. it's more important that the child, we call these traumas because, as Peter Levine says, trauma is in the eyes of the child who perceives it. I want to call it an experience. The child had an experience.
Wow.
Their belief of that experience is this: I'm not loved, I'm not cared for. And their behavior is this: I'll be perfect and good. Call it trauma if you want, but the point is it's an experience. Now you have a belief, you have a behavior. What do you want to do about changing that? If we can go back to that little girl, little boy that's 5, we can find out what's going on for them. And then we can help them come up with a new belief and a new experience, a new behavior. But then you got to take that out of the session and practice it. The hypnosis is not magical or curative. It's magical in that it helps us get to where we need to get. You still got to do the work. Still got to do the work. But that is the word trauma. What was your trauma? How are you? What was your experience in that time? And what did you believe about it? How can you change that?
Right. And I think another thing that I like to think of it as small t trauma, because if we're looking for trauma, we're thinking of lots of yelling, lots of screaming, rather than the needs of the child not being met. And one of the things that happens is, like you said, all these patterns form, and you're like, why does this always happen to me? You know, and if you think of it as something that's happening to you, you're a victim of it, rather than, oh, I recognize now that I'm projecting something, a doubt about myself without even realizing it. And everyone else is going, oh, but they can see it and I can't. When I pay attention to what people are responding to me, then I realize, oh, I guess I'm bringing this energy. And then therefore I then have this ability. It may feel difficult or impossible to shift that energy, but awareness of it makes it possible to address it.
I would like to talk about that for a second, because the second you brought that up, it brought me to codependence. And I started bringing codependence into my TMS work not till about 2018, because I was getting ready to go to my internship for hypnosis for 2 years. And one of the books it was a textbook, it's not a textbook, but it was going to be our textbook, was Healing, it's called Breaking Free of the Victim Trap, which is about codependence. And when I started understanding that more and started learning how to step out of it myself, that was like, oh my gosh, this is hugely related to TMS. And the last few years, we're talking about it more and more. That victim, and as soon as I criticize,
I need this pain. It's working for me.
But it's working in an unhealthy way. That's the difference.
Yeah. Or the codependence may be, you might have a hyper sense of responsibility for other people, and you might then be drawn towards somebody who has a hyper need to be taken care of. But you're both masking those things because they're kind of not that socially acceptable, and you're aware of them enough to see them until all of a sudden you've kind of intertwined. And what gets difficult about that is, say you notice it. Well, if you shift, the relationship has to shift. So the other person has to do it. And that brings up lots of problems. So as soon as you start to shift, they're like, bam, get back there. You know, that's not what I expected.
Think about it. Rescuers and victims, they are drawn together like magnets.
But then if the rescuer says, actually, you know what? I think you have the capacity to take care of yourself a little bit better. And I recognize that that's not good for me, so I'm not going to do that. But that doesn't work if the other person is not willing to go, oh yeah, let's shift this balance a little. And so that becomes really problematic, because honestly, for many people, I think one of the biggest holding patterns is they recognize things, but to bring it into the relationship, they're almost too afraid to bring it into the relationship.
Why is that hard?
That's because you're going to lose the relationship, and the relationship is unhealthy, and that is filling a need in an unhealthy way. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's difficult, but it's also, I can't wait for you to change. This is what I'm doing. Boundary, I'm out of here. Now, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. If both people want to heal together, great, if they're both on the path together. But frequently the person, and this happened in my relationship, I didn't even know it. When I got separated in 2012, I never even realized how much of the codependence kept us together.
Right.
And I started
but also keeps you from healing, because to heal means that you are going to end the relationship, but your whole goal is to support this person in this relationship. So how can you do that until it becomes such a great pressure that you realize it. And part of the problem is then maybe you get really angry and you storm out of the relationship rather than creating an opportunity for the other person to join you, because you may have to wait a little while. You may be moving a little bit faster, but maybe,
that's a choice too. Is this, I mean, me and my wife had started having problems in 2006. We went to counselors. We tried to do the work and it wasn't going to work for us, but we tried it. When we storm out and we don't work on it, that's just a distraction. I'm going to go find another partner just like that. You're right.
True. Right. Yeah. So it's all the work. There's this really amazing Shel Silverstein book called The Big O, and it's about the missing piece. And it really just nails this idea of how you have like a pie-shaped circle that's going along, but it's got a missing pie piece, and it picks up the missing piece. And that missing piece is really a mess, and it needs someone to carry it along
right on my shelf.
Yeah, right. And so but then what happens is maybe the missing piece with that support starts to grow, but then grows out of the pie, and then it's ka-thunk, 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 and then the pie goes, "You're out of here. You're too strong. You're not meeting that need."
But what did the missing piece learn from the Big O when he met him? I think I'm your missing piece. And Big O says, "I'm not missing any pieces."
Right.
And then he taught
the
missing piece how he could roll on his own.
I think it's too deep.
Let's say
it's too deep. It's way too deep for me.
Oh my God! It's a children's book.
I know.
It's a children's book written for adults.
All Shel Silverstein's books are for adults.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But the message is really great for small children as well. Right.
Yes, and if we taught them younger, we would have a challenge. Another one is that I just read. The
Growing Tree.
Children's version of how deep is your bucket? What was the name of that book? It's about, I'll tell you in a second. I've got it on Audible.
Okay.
Something about the size of your bucket.
Right.
And that was, again, how much capacity do we have? Because that's another thing. We talk about all these things. How full is your bucket? We talk about a lot of this, and this is something I'd like to see us talking about more, is you tell me to feel my emotions. You tell me to be comfortable with my discomfort, right? Well, I can only do that if I have the capacity for it. Some days we get up and we get out of bed and we got everything done today. And other days we drag ourselves out of bed and we're not doing so well. And those not doing so well, my capacity is smaller.
It's your thoughts about your capacity. It's your thoughts about
it can also capacity. Be right. So, but it's also, you have to kind of respect where your capacity is on that day. And if you think, I should have a better capacity, then you're causing problems. So it's also about respecting where you are, but also, putting on your big kid pants and working through it. I see you brought up Esther's thing. I also want to talk. I saw earlier about the digestive issues. I think you really should read Dr. Clark's book, They Can't Find Anything Wrong. Because with digestive issues, one thing he found is that there's often a very specific story that's related to them. And that figuring out what that story is helpful.
And that's where hypnosis helps a great deal. I'd love to answer Esther's question, though. What if the issue doesn't clear up, even when the emotional beliefs are resolved? That is a non sequitur. If the issue didn't clear up, there's still an emotional belief behind it. Dr. Sarno,
something below it. There's something below it again.
He talked about that was symptom imperative. If I have a symptom imperative, it just means I have not solved it. And honestly, I don't think we're going to solve all of them. Dr. Evans taught me that. Go for the biggies. You do not have to be in counseling or in theory and dig out every issue in your life. You got to get the biggies.
Rose taught me it's the pattern. Once you see the pattern, right, Rose? The intergenerational
Right, then you can disrupt it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, it's still, one, a choice. Two, in my case, I had been practicing this stuff for 4 decades before I learned to practice it a new way. And 3, I have to have the capacity for it. And one of the ways to improve our life is to build our capacity. I talk about the 5 pillars. I don't know if someone called them that, or where I got it from, but I think it's Ken Wilber's work. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? Are you getting exercise every day? Do you have a exercise? Do you have a spiritual practice? And do you have a social life? And those 5 things help us feel better daily so I can manage more. Because the more I can manage, the more I can delve into the places that don't feel good. Because if I can't feel badly, if I can't feel the uncomfortable emotions, I can't resolve them. But that takes capacity, and we need to practice that too. There's a lot of aspects to this. That's why I think you can't just read a book and get better. There are a couple people that have, but I'll tell you, all the people I've interviewed that have rapidly recovered, there's always more to it. They had done meditation.
Talk about that with Rose. You were talking about maybe doing a study about some people get better sooner, some people get better later, but people will be on their journey.
Yes.
And if they're accepting the journey and not the destination, they're going to be healing.
Well, that's one of the problems with the cure is I seek this destination that doesn't exist. What is cured? Please help me understand that. The first time I heard anybody define cured was in the Alan Gordon's book, The Way Out. He said, for our study, we will define cured as little or no pain. For our study, when the study's complete, this is my definition. I was like, fabulous. Someone finally put a definition on what he defines as cured.
Well, speaking of definitions, I think one that's really important is the definition of pain, which is that it's a physical and emotional response to tissue damage or the perception of tissue damage. So only half of that is physical. In fact, I would say it's only 25% of it, because it's the perception of tissue damage, even if there's none, is half of it, and it's the emotional aspect, right? So if you put all that together, very little of it is a physical process, but we have typically treated it for the last 50 years as purely physical, right? And so if you're only looking at some small percentage of what it is and not that interactive, as the definition declares, then it's a folly. It's nonsense to try to treat on a physical process.
I have to tell you that when I saw some of those study results and they said that my brain will light up differently because I've had chronic pain, I was like, wow, that's interesting. Our brains change our perception of pain too, and how they trigger pain based on their experiences. And as Alan Gordon has shown, and these studies are showing, we can actually tweak that. That is ultimately neuroplasticity.
Right. And if we let the amygdala decide rather than our cortex, this is where it's like, how do I think my way out of it? You can't think your way out of it, but you can use your cortex, your thinking brain, to talk to your amygdala and say, listen, you got this wrong. This thing is not scary. Don't worry about it. And you can do things like breathing exercises to tell your body that you're safe. So there's a lot of things you can do to get rid of fear that retrains your brain not to respond in the chronic type way.
And the key to that is awareness that it's happening and making a choice. Viktor Frankl.
In the moment.
Stimulus and response, there's a space. In the space is my power to choose my response.
Beautiful.
In my response, in my choice, is my growth and my freedom. Okay. Getting into that space requires managing our shock, not going into fight or flight. Because the fight or flight, bam, we just go to the reactive, which is whatever's pre-programmed, and don't even think of it. And that's what the amygdala's job is. Save my life. See snake jump, see tiger run, right?
Rose, you were going to say something.
No, it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. But the fear, look, and this is a man talking about, horrors that I'm not here to judge people's pain, but there's a man who's seeing horrors and making a decision that he's not going to be affected by what's happening because he can make a choice in that moment. It's very powerful. And how do you apply that statement? How do you apply Viktor Frankl's work into everyday life when I'm in excruciating pain and I'm focusing on the pain?
Well, I think there's two things. One, and I get bad mouth for this. I actually got thrown off a group for this. And that is, sometimes you got to take pain.
You always come work with Rose and I.
I will.
I've often got thrown off groups as well.
It was blasphemous for me to say that Dr. Sarno was prescribing pain medication toward the end of his career. Yet I was there and saw it because he saw the value in it. If it had not been for Percocet and fentanyl, I would not have gotten to a place where I could go spend the time. And I'm not prescribing drugs for anybody's. Please, everybody got to make that decision on your own. Those things.
And it doesn't mean you're weak if you take a drug.
Yeah, and Dr. Evans taught me that. He goes, "Why are you suffering? Why don't you?" But he said, "But if you're going to take that pill, take it with a consciousness that says, I'm taking this pill to treat the symptom only. I'm working on the true cause." There's the difference there. So we need to be able to do that work, and to get into the space, for me, meditation. And that's documented scientifically. The more we meditate, the more our brain changes, and the more we calm those processes like the amygdala and give us a little more wiggle room to get in the space.
Yeah.
I remember Michael got relief with acupuncture in the movie. I was like, I saw that relief you got from the acupuncturist, you know.
Yeah,
I don't see a problem with relief. I see a problem with using methods to treat what's wrong. When we're treating the symptom only, we're not getting to the root cause. That's our key, right?
But right. And so the idea is that sometimes you need a little help to get through a moment there. And you know, that like I avoided it for years, and then a friend dragged me to it, and it was like, oh, that got me over this hump, and I was much better for a while. That didn't solve the problem completely, but it did allow me to, the ability to move forward for a while.
Tell me, Matthew, how much pain relief do you actually get
from
avoiding your feelings?
Sorry, you broke up. One more time, Rose.
Okay. I said, how much pain relief do you actually get? How much of the pain actually goes with something like a narcotic? But is it more like you're numbed out?
Honestly,
and you can't focus. You can't focus, so you don't go to the pain because
it made it tolerable. Remember something: when you're in pain, 10 on a scale of 10, there is nothing you can do or think about other than pain. The advantage of the opiates was it takes the edge off. The disadvantage are many. One, they're highly addictive. I'm just super lucky I never became addicted because I've taken a lot of them. The other downside is your mental status is altered. You know, you can't drive, you can't go out.
That's
you're
where
not
I'm coming.
Thinking clearly.
Yes. So you can't think. So you can't think. So you don't go to your pain. So it actually doesn't. Yes. So it disorganizes you even more.
Yes, and Candace Pert, who was the one who discovered.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
Candace Pert discovered the opiate receptor in the 70s.
Yes.
She's done some great stuff. She was in What the Bleep Do We Know? She wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion. Brilliant.
Amazing. Yes.
Scientist. Also a woman who stood up to her male colleagues.
And was supposed to get the big awards, but didn't get them.
Award? Yeah.
She in her book she said that the body is the unconscious, and I was just like, the body is the unconscious. I kept saying it over and over again. The body is the unconscious, and I couldn't figure it out till weeks later, understanding this.
To get back to Rose's point, and Candace Pert talks about this, is that yes, one of the advantages of the opiate is not so much that it's an analgesic, but it makes you not care. So that's, again, what Rose is saying. It's changing how you deal with the pain, not necessarily correcting the pain. So you don't care as much. Again, I want to be really clear on this. Please, people, don't take meds unless you talk to it with your doctor and you're comfortable with that. Because particularly the opiates, they are very dangerous. They should be used appropriately. So, and again, I'm not a doctor, so I want to be real clear with the meds.
Robbie's question because I know she's struggling.
Not being a physician, it's very hard to answer that question. I would refer Robbie to see a pain.
No, she's actually reducing, her medication. It's just very, very hard for her. It's a lot of anxiety and a lot of reaction of the body. So I know it's hard for her to accept the reality. It's very hard. And I know that,
yeah, if she's got a coach or a counselor, that find the process that works for you, whether it's the Curable app or seeing someone or working through this with a counselor. It is I've had pain times.
Maybe you want to address when you don't feel there's other options and you're responsible. What do you tell yourself? How do you love yourself through it? How do you be compassionate through it? How do you just hold the hand of the little girl inside of us and know you'll get through it?
Well, holding the hand of the little kid inside me is really important. I go there. The first thing I do, like Alan Gordon recommends, a little somatic tracking. Sit with it. No judgment. Can I be with it? And then as I get there, I ask 4 questions. How old are you? I want to know how old that little boy is that's having a problem. What are you feeling? What's going on for you right now? What do you need? What do you want? And then see if I can meet that need, because 90% of the time, all that little boy wants to do is climb into my lap. If I'm dealing with the exile from the internal family service perspective, if I'm dealing with the exile, the part that had the bad experience, he just wants to climb in my lap. He just wants me to listen to him and love him and protect him. If I'm dealing with the protector, the part that's creating the pain, that one can be a little nattier because he really thinks he's helping the other guy. And you have to unblend them a little bit and work. But understand, I've been doing this a long time. I've had a lot of counseling. I've had some fabulous people since Dr. Evans that have been my heart-centered counselor. She's just, we go to that place if I can get there. But if there's that much pain, it's there for a reason, as Alan Gordon says. The thing he talks about when he's in his dorm room and the fire alarm goes off, and he's like, I know this is just a prank, but I gotta get up. I don't want to get up, but this thing is so loud, I can't possibly ignore it. When your pain's at that level, very challenging, very challenging.
Yeah, I think one thing to realize is that when your pain's at that level, it's your body forcing you into a crisis position rather than awareness that you're having a situation. And so when you're in crisis, you kind of have to deal with crisis. And sometimes that means a little bit of fractured thinking and doing whatever you can to get out of crisis. And sometimes, like you said, maybe, Dr. Sarno said, if you have 10 of 10 pain, sure, take an analgesic, take something, but don't think that's the answer. Like, get out of crisis, and that's when you start to do the work. You then start an acceptance practice. You accept where you're at, and you work to start moving forward without too much expectation or judgment.
Somebody's anxiety be so high that they won't get out of crisis?
Until they're ready. I mean, there are times
I would say that
online with me.
That's almost like, yeah. Well, that's a crisis perspective. Like when you're in crisis, you're thinking, this anxiety will never end. I don't know what I'm going to do. But if you go, okay, I'm having really extreme anxiety and I recognize it's a crisis, but I'm going to move it to being a situation. That's where all the different practices help.
Right, but Michael, remember something, Michael, you have a lot of experience like I do doing this, practicing it, getting it wrong, getting it right. When someone like this Robbie who just mentioned it, someone like that, I might spend the whole session just doing meditation and calming exercises with them, because if you got to get that
100%
nervous system calm down and get out of shock, get out of fight or flight, or you're going nowhere. Yeah.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying, which is that when there's a crisis, you recognize it's a crisis. We're going to move it into a situation. And while the crisis feels like that there's no way out of it, that's the way a crisis feels. And so we do those things to find.
Give us an example, Michael. We need an example so that people can see it. Because as you speak, it's sort of like a big picture out there. But to help a patient, We need to actually dive in to a particular thing. So can you
So
make
I'll give you a good example.
scenario?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I had an increasingly difficult problem with my leg. Right when we were putting out our movie called Battle for Brooklyn, and facing lots of frustration and little support. But I determined I was going to go do the Q&A at every single screening. And each screening, it got more and more difficult for me to even walk into the space and stand up. But I did it every single screening. And then we did fantastic at the box office, but nobody else would show the movie. So then it became kind of a crisis level of pain. And actually a friend's mother came over. She was an orthopedist. And she goes, "You have to get surgery. You're going to have gimpy leg. You're going to get a gimpy leg." Like literally an hour later, it went out. And I knew that was a crisis. And I screamed, "Grab the camera. I realize this is a crisis. And I'm going to have to be in this movie." But over the next 2 weeks, I was determined to move it from crisis to situation by taking each crisis moment, like where the pain would get extreme, and going, okay, what can I learn from this? Okay. And from that, I would figure out, oh yeah, I see. Like for instance, I felt like I had to let my sister know I was okay. So I was trying to type to her. I was getting this stabbing pain in my arm. And I was like, whoa. And then I realized, oh wait, I'm doing that so that she'll feel better. Like I'm worried about how she feels if she's worried about me. Once I realized that, I was able to type because my body was saying, no more. It was making it a crisis because I wasn't seeing that it was a situation.
Wow.
Once I saw it was a situation, it literally, the pain went away. Right. It doesn't mean I jumped up, but that was a really clear indication that that's how you move out of crisis. You recognize what it is that's screaming at you to learn, and then you address it. And then you address it, and then it comes up again, it sneaks up, and you address it, and you address it. And you get tired as hell of addressing it, but you realize that you look back, and you're like, oh, I guess I walked a mile. Oh, in my own shoes, So it takes a while, but you get there, and soon you're walking faster and you're moving up the mountain. But you're not going to move up the mountain by looking at the mountain and saying, I want to be at the top. It doesn't happen that way.
But I think, and Michael, I'd like to put just some different words on it to give people another set of words that mean the same thing. What you're talking about in crisis is shock, is fight or flight.
Right.
When
well, crisis is taking a situation and making it something you have to flee from.
Right. But the point is, when we're in shock, when we're in fight or flight, limbic system offline, thinking mind offline. All we're doing is surviving. If we can get an inkling that that's where we're at, then we can go, oh, I need to get back into my body. I need to get back into my
so clever,
experience.
so smart.
When I get back into my experience, now I can feel. I can't feel when I'm in crisis mode.
Right. And so that's like when people talk to me about like, what are the tools? The first tool is go to your breath, because that's the best way to tell your body that we're okay and we don't have to be in fight or flight. And if you don't do that, you can't think your way out of it because your thinking is messed up. So here are a couple more. Bring it down.
One of my textbooks for school was called Treating Shock. And we use multiple tools for that. Get up and walk around if you're at a desk. Drink something hot or cold. Take an ice pack or a bag of peas out of the freezer. Put them on your chest or on your neck. Hot pack, cold pack, something to get me back into my body. That's the key. Right. The breath is great because it's always there, but it doesn't always work for everybody.
But I agree. I think movement is also really important because sometimes fight or flight is actually not fight, it's freeze. So what can you do? Like my daughter was struggling with something today. I said, get up, get the fuck out of the house and just go for a walk. You're stuck in a pattern of thinking that you're not going to break out of by thinking your way out of it. Just go for a walk. And it took some struggle to get her to do it. But then she's like, yeah, you're right. That helped.
And she's lucky to have you that you recognized what she needed. When I raised my kids, I raised my kids like my parents raised me. I would yell at them or I would give them a hard time or you have to do this or else. Well, there's no healing in punishment. But when we sit with the uncomfortable emotions, we allow them. There's a great viral video about this young father. He's probably in his 20s, early 30s. And his little boy or girl, I'm not sure which it is just having a full-blown tantrum. And he just holds space for her. and lets her do her thing. Because I would have punished my kids for a tantrum. When in actuality, a tantrum is just a child's inability to say, "Hey, Dad, I'm really having a rough day today." But they're 3. And that the father, you watch him hold space for them. The child works through all that energy and ultimately climbs into his lap. And you go, "Oh, wow. Isn't that awesome?" Sometimes we just have to have someone hold us.
I just got a book about self-compassion by this Professor Neff. She studied self-compassion, like the biology of gratitude, the biology of belief, the biology of self-compassion. I mean, it's brilliant what she's saying. It's all the Sarno work. It's all the Sarno. Why is it so hard to be self-compassionate?
Because we're not taught how to be.
Okay.
We're not taught that way. Think
Okay,
about
so how do you teach someone?
it takes some work. It takes getting them to recognize that when they bring that little boy or little girl in and they want to hug, not want to be yelled at. Dr. Sarno, one of the things he said that was not positive was yell at your brain. First thing Dr. Evans said to me, "Why would you do that? Why would you yell at your brain?" And I'm going, "Because that's what I do." Well, what happens when I yell at my little kid? He goes scampering into the corner. And then what happens? He's suppressed. He comes back, right? What's your first response if your 4-year-old, you call him to dinner and he just sweeps everything off his desk and starts raging? I imagine most people listening going, they'd probably jump on the kid or say, "Stop that," or "You have to clean that up before you have dinner," or whatever. The person that referred this story to me was my counselor, and she said to her son, "You must be very angry. What's going on with you?" And she allowed him to have his emotion and have his space and feel. And then she said, "Okay, now it's time for lunch." He still has to clean up the mess, but she gave him space to feel. And our parents didn't have the capacity to do that. So we were taught not to do it. So it's a bunch of retraining, really. It's learning that, oh, this feels better. Which would you rather have? Would you rather have me yell at you, or would you rather have me hug you? We got lots of parts.
Sometimes they don't. So sometimes they don't want to get hugged either, and that becomes complicated as well. So it's
okay. But wouldn't you ask the question why?
And that's where the 4 questions come. After I go, "How old are you and how do you feel?" What do you need? What do you want? I want to sit over here all by myself. Okay. Would you like me to stay or would you like me to leave? Well, I'd like you to stay. Okay, I'll stay. You let me know how it goes. But we don't.
I'm talking less as a person than as a parent.
Well, aren't we reparenting
Sometimes
ourselves?
it can be hard, we are trying to, and it can be difficult at times as well, because I think one of the dangers of some of these stories is like we go, "Oh, well, if you're just compassionate, then it will unfold beautifully," and it often doesn't. And so it's a long practice of continuing to be compassionate, even though it doesn't unfold as we hope. So that's also about acceptance of like a little compassion isn't always going to fix it. It opens the way for fixing it, but sometimes it takes a lot of interactions.
Well, sometimes it doesn't happen either because the person can't accept it. They haven't actually got the receptors. They have to be scaffolded so that they can actually find the receptors, because they haven't actually they've been underdeveloped, because they've always believed that they're wrong and that they've got the problem and not the caregivers. So,
and if you're used
when
to
the self-compassion story is sort of like, I find it heartbreaking, because this idea of self-compassion has to you have to have a receptor for it,
Right.
And if you don't have a receptor,
I was thinking of it
to be
slightly
built.
Yeah.
And that is also, remember, why do we go to victimhood or rescuer or persecutor? Because it's what we know. It's what we're getting, what we're receiving, and what we know. Well, if I start offering compassion to someone who's never had compassion, they're going to look at me a little weird. Also, they may have wanted compassion as a little boy, and because they didn't get it, they made a decision that they didn't need it.
Right.
Well said.
You can't not need compassion. It's a need, not a want.
Hello, American male.
Right. right? Are we not trained that way?
Absolutely.
Right?
I think
We
it's
can be angry.
more than American.
Yeah.
Western. Male.
Well, not even male or families in general. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the adverse childhood experiences should be what you're talking about. I mean, on some level, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
all
that makes me think, like the way Dr. Sarno began, it was much more about kind of, it was a more limited idea of like, we're going to focus on pain or we're going to focus on X and Y. And I think, or he was very stentorian about how he approached it because he had to be really strong. Otherwise, he wasn't going to cut through the noise. But I think you're right. I think that the ACE study is like, we're going to choose 10 big T traumas, right? And so we're going to make this so clear it's undeniable. But if you start to add in the small T traumas, you really just see the underlying impact of it and how it continues to play out. But it's interesting as well because it's playing out in every aspect of culture. I'm trying to remember something I watched the other night. Oh, it was about the tennis player who was going against Roddick. There's a movie on Netflix. And basically, he was always like in the top 100, and then he had like essentially a temper tantrum in one match. And his friend, he passed him after the first set. He says, "I'm gonna fucking kill you, you piece of shit! I'm gonna destroy you! I hate your ass!" And he did. And then he started climbing in the ranks, and he went from like 100th to the top 7 in the world. But it started to destroy him on the inside. And so the next year he was supposed to play Federer, and he had to drop out of the U.S. Open and went into this anxiety-ridden, depressive mode for like a year before he finally started to deal with the trauma that got him there. And part of the trauma was how he had behaved in that year when he decided, I'm going to switch into being an asshole. And even that was like really traumatizing to him, but it was the only way he could win. And then it raises these questions about winning and everything else. But so more and more we see in the media, every show is about trauma. Like Ted Lasso is Ted Trauma Lasso. Right, like
it's the human experience. It's Finding Joe. It's the human experience.
Right, but when you're talking about storytelling, every story in that show turns on a small trauma being healed and taking each character to a higher level of a consciousness until finally the coach starts to get there because his trauma is quite great and he finally works through it. And part of it is he's all jokey and not very present. And he becomes more and more truly present as the show comes on. So the whole show is about healing trauma, So we're seeing that everywhere in culture. And honestly, a lot of that came to him because he actually had alopecia and lost all his hair. And I think through things like Sarno and other things, he came to see the mind-body aspect and the healing of trauma. And that's where that whole show comes from.
Wow.
And it's interesting.
But we're seeing it in every part of culture.
When I first got involved in this, it opened the door up to some spiritual work, and I started meeting people at meditations and spiritual groups, and I'm hearing about these traumas, awful stuff that I don't even want to mention here right now. And I'm looking at my life going, I grew up in a middle-class family. There was always food on the table. My parents were home. They didn't fight. I always had toys. I had my own bedroom. I had friends to play with. What could I possibly have been traumatized by that created 10 on a scale of 10 pain with nothing physically wrong with me? And it baffled me. And again, we have to be very careful about that word trauma. And remember Peter Levine's words, trauma is in the eyes of the child who perceives it. My trauma was not getting enough attention as a child. Not being listened to. I was never unsafe. I was never without food or clothes or friends or anything. Never. I've never wanted for anything. I mean, I haven't been wealthy. I haven't had boats and cars and all that crap. But I've never.
That would have been a different trauma.
Yes. Yeah. Again, I'm trying to get away from some of these buzzwords. For me, experience works better. What's your experience? How do you want to change that experience? That's where I go with people. How can I help you see what you're not seeing and make a choice that's different? We have all this programming down here. What was that? Warrior Heart, which is based on Don Miguel Ruiz's work. We have this manual. We created this book, and it's down here, and we've been writing in that book since conception. And whenever we have an experience, we go, okay, all right, that's how I handle it. This is how I'll handle it. well, maybe the how you handled it in the past doesn't serve you anymore. It's not. It's something you learn. I learned recently, not so long ago, maybe 2 years, that I was following my dad's way of doing things because I learned it from him. But my personality and traits didn't fit that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So for almost 6 decades, I was doing it dad's way. And that worked for dad. It doesn't work for me. And when I finally realized that, I was like, sorry, Dad, no problem. You did it your way. I'm going to do that. And then I was like, I feel so much better now. Because it aligned with who I was. Wow. But remember, a lot of things we learn from our parents aren't from adverse experiences necessarily. From ages 1 to 7, all we do is copy our parents because that's how we learn. Watch the
our siblings. You've forgotten that.
All our teachers are our siblings, our teachers, our parents, our friends, and we copy them because we believe it's the way to do things. We don't know any better. Well, guess what? Sometimes the way we were taught to do things doesn't work for us.
So then we get to accept that, and then we get to accept that. And Michael, whatever arises, we get to accept that because that's taking responsibility.
Right.
Yes. When I take responsibility for my stuff, life changes. I am not responsible for you at all. I'm only responsible for me. How can we separate that? Because that's the codependence piece too. I got to take care of my partner.
But part of it is also really taking responsibility for ourselves, which is the hardest thing imaginable sometimes. Like we can say, I take responsibility for that. But there's this deeper level of that where you have to truly take responsibility. So a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. I'm so sorry I did that. But that's not truly taking responsibility. Truly taking responsibility is thinking like, why did I do that? And what is it about me that made me so angry? That's about me. So it's, then you have the ability to respond, which I think is a much better way of thinking about it. It's a response ability, which is not, it's response ability rather than a responsibility. It's really very different. It's the ability to respond appropriately rather than react.
And that again goes back to the codependent piece. And another thing that we learn as children is when we're that little narcissistic 3-year-old and we're showing off and all that, we're told, don't do that. That's being selfish. And we learn not to care for ourselves because we're told it's wrong. And as a paramedic and EMT, I was taught that if I don't take care of me first, we're both going to die. That's foolish. I can't run into the fire if I don't have the appropriate gear. That's not selfish. That's selfless. Because if I don't care for me first, now I become another victim and now they got to rescue both of us. But our brains are going, no, that's not what mom taught me. Don't be selfish. Take care of everybody else first. That's the message we got.
So,
and that's not healthy either. Great conversation, folks.
I'm speechless. Look, because what happens, and then there's this personality, like too responsible. So it's not about making you less responsible or more. It's about balancing and for you to be able to know yourself when you're being a people pleaser. Like how many people said, I'll never forget, Danny Fagan would say, well, Sarno's book, it was written for me and I didn't even need a highlighter. So we know the personality of the book. And then it's about, and Rose will say, well, we don't need to change who you are. We're looking for a character shift, and we're looking to just take who you are and balance that out. So we're just right back to who are you? Do you know yourself? One person, I think it was Esther, said, look in the mirror. I'm still writing on my mirror. I'm enough. I mean, come on, I'm 64. It never goes away.
No, and you got to keep saying it until you really believe it down deep. Before we finish, there's something I wanted to share about Michael because I remember that showing in New York City and the challenges that came from it afterwards for some of the critics. And I'm like praising Michael going, oh man, he put himself and his family on film in front of everybody. He was so vulnerable. And some of the critics were not happy about that. And I was like, no, man, you did a great job. And I still have to say thank you, Michael Galinsky, for being who you are and being the patient that we all needed to see, the person that put your family, your life on the camera for the rest of us to see, and your eloquence in words and your ability to get your point across in your words and your films are just beautiful. And I so want to thank you right now, before I forget, that your movie and the work you've done and the work you continue to do continues to show people they can do it too. They can do it too.
Here.
Well,
Great work. Thank you.
Very
sir.
sweet.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And, right back at you. It's like what I was saying at the beginning was, I think these groups are really important. And I think you do a really great job of helping everyone else. And I think, one thing I've had to learn is, and to work on, is to let go of any expectation when I put the stuff forward. I have a little bit more when I put stuff forward with my own children, but, if it comes with expectation, it comes with resistance. And that's been the biggest, thing that I've had to learn. And that goes back to like even the critics, right? I'm not angry at them. Instead I can see, wow, like you're a critic because you're critical, because you're traumatized, and it's much easier to judge other people, right? But also when we feel that way, we gravitate towards systems that will pull us in and support us and give us agency. And so, if a system believes X, we can't really see outside that. So I get it. It's a little frustrating, but I also know that, like, if you look at the way people respond to it, 90% of the people have healing experiences from it, who write about it or who comment on it. 4% would be happy to come to my house and stick a knife in my neck. They're so angry about what the movie is, which is fine. I look outside both ways before.
Good PR, bad PR is PR, isn't it?
Nah, not really. It's like one more reason not to watch something. That's
And
the
those
problem
are
with
the
the bad review.
people.
Yeah.
Those are the people that you woke up. They don't know they got woke up yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they haven't written back to say thank you for waking me up. So I'll know
That
when
may
they do that.
take a while.
It may take a couple of years.
Well, all the rage is like, there's nothing like it. There's movies coming out and they're wonderful, but there is just nothing to compare to that movie. It is like, has a life of its own, and it's way alive. It's way alive in Rose's and my life.
Right.
And there are people all over the globe who are looking at it right now.
Well, all credit to the father. Honestly, the speech he wrote for our wedding really was instrumental in making it, because it really brought it back to the absolute profound import of both metaphor and acceptance. Right? It's like you don't want to be the star, right? Being the star is being the competer, right? What you want to be is the character actor who recognizes that they're stepping into a role and doesn't get stuck in that role. So if you're the star, you have to play that role all the goddamn time in Winning the Street. If you're the character actor, right, then you kind of play the role in the street, but you go back to doing what you're doing, and you don't get it crossed up. You don't get it mixed up. You're just playing a role and you're having a fun time with it. And you play it with a lightness of touch, right? If you play it with too much sense of who you are, then you mess it all up.
But Michael, you weren't playing. You were the real deal.
Yeah,
That's
but
true.
no, but it was also like, the thing is, yes and no, but I tried to do it like with a light touch. I could have gotten into the heaviness of it, but that would have made it too personal and then less easy for other people to project their things on. So it's trying to find that balance where you're being true and real enough to communicate, but not so specific that it becomes you and the other person thinks, well, that's that person's story. Instead, you try to play it like, that's why I'm saying all credit goes to my dad for that incredible speech he wrote, because one thing that really informed the whole movie was every time I read it, I get something different from it, because it meets me where I'm at, because it's not specific to time, place, or idea. Since it's metaphorical in itself, it's brilliant because everyone who reads it can get a reflection of their own experience from it.
True.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well said.
Matthew, could I ask you to talk about your Facebook page and the group that run it and the type of support it gives people? Would you mind talking about that for a minute, please?
The Facebook page is called Tension Myositis Syndrome It's closed now. It will be open again shortly. We close it temporarily when we get a lot of influx of new people, because we want people to be able to have a good experience. I inherited the group probably about 5 or 6 years ago. A guy by the name of Bryce Royson, I think it was. Anyway, Bryce owned that group, and he's another one that goes way back. I don't know whatever happened to him. I haven't heard from him in ages. And he just kind of said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I got to go. Whatever's going on for him. Here's this group. You take care of it." And I nurtured it along, and I have tried to provide an environment where we're not stuck on one thing, where it's about John Sarno's work and Schechter's work and Schubner's work and Dr. Matte's work. It's endless. And really our only criteria is that you have to be on page with us, that you believe that repressed emotions are causing this problem. How do we feel our emotions? What the process is many. We also support love and compassion. We are very watchful. I have about 5 or 6 other hosts that help me, moderators that help me. And we keep a sharp eye on the page to make sure we don't get firefights, because as you know, people can get pissed off at each other. We'll just go in and say, "Hey, let's chill a little bit. Let's let each other have our opinions. If there's a guideline breakage, we are going to step in and say something." But it's more about allowing people to share and guiding them to resources. And again, as Michael said, if they're constantly talking about we don't prevent people from talking about their symptoms, but we, again, just gently remind them, that's not serving you. What are you doing about it? And if that resource doesn't work, let me give you another one. I got 500 of them. I got lots of resources. Right. There's ISTDB, which Rose is doing. And there is all kinds of different therapies. There's heart-centered hypnotherapy. There is, I don't like talk therapy. I don't think it really is getting to anything. There's Alan Gordon's process. There's Dr. Matte's process. Everybody's got a process. Try one. If it's not working, come back. We'll give you something else to try. So Our group is about love and compassion, a compassionate approach. If you don't agree with me, you don't agree with me. I'm okay with that. That's okay. Don't beat me up about it. Don't yell at me, but say, okay, we can agree to disagree. So we try to be very compassionate. We also are very lucky to have a lot of people that have been in the business a long time and have had a lot of personal successes, as well as there are a number of practitioners. We have a bunch of practitioners in the group. And we act as peers, though. We don't want the advertising. We do have a little section for practitioners to put their information. But it's about, how did that work for you? Tell me about how that worked for you. Tell me how that helped you. Don't just post something and go, here's something to do. Okay. How did that help you? Help me understand how it helped you. So that's my approach there. I run a couple of groups on and off online. I have a mindfulness group I teach where my mother used to live, with people who are in their 80s, 90s, and 100, which is fascinating working with people like that. And there's a private group I started on Sundays, just kind of by accident. One of the guys on the group said, "Hey, are there any groups out there?" And I wasn't aware of how many groups there were, but I was like, I'll lead it and someone else will do the Zoom work. And we just ended up with about 10 people. We now have about 6, I think, regulars that have met every Sunday for a year. And these people have had phenomenal progress. And one of the reasons is because they come into it and they feel safe. They've talked to the people in the group often enough to go, I can say this. And sometimes I'll say, wow, that was really brave. I appreciate your vulnerability. And they go, yeah, I wouldn't say that at home. I'd only say that here. And it shows that we've created a safe space. And if the group, when we can create safe space, now I'll be more vulnerable. And vulnerability is the key. Emotional exposure, risk, and uncertainty. If I can deal with that, I can move forward.
Wow. What drove you to, it was a great explanation. Thanks for asking that question, Rose. But what drove you to hypnotherapy? Because not all of the coaches are doing hypnotherapy. They're doing some breathing, they're doing some, and,
Well, I do all of that stuff too. Hypnotherapy is just another tool. I happen to be seeing a heart-centered hypnotherapist as a counselor in 2014. And in 2016, she goes, I'm running this hypnosis class. I think you'd really like it. Why don't you take it? And I took the class expecting it to just be for me. And I was like one of the only people in the room, maybe 2 of us out of 12, who were not therapists of some sort, not MSWs or PhDs. And I was so fascinated by it. I was like, this is really cool. I'm going to ultimately get certified in this. And I'll add it to the other things I knew, which were Reiki and meditation and things like that, and stuff that Dr. Evans had taught me, somatic experiencing, EFT, emotional focus therapy, attachment theory. Said I could tie this all together into my next career. So I signed up for the 2-year program. That was in late 2017, early 2018. And then they offered me early retirement because I was in information technology. And I was getting to an age where I was getting expensive for them and they didn't want us. So they gave us all these packages to leave. So I was like, oh, I can start my business now. So I was going to actually go full time. And then my dad had passed in 18. So I figured I could spend more time with my mom, which I did for the past few years. She passed a couple months ago. And that gave me an opportunity to do a little less of that work and start to feel it out. So I do see some clients, but I'm also trying to create more groups. I got a couple others in progress, one for practitioners, one for clients. We're trying to build up something called the Mindbody Connection, which is something me and Denise Iankita created. And the Mindbody Connection is we're going to try to bring people together to work with each other, not just with the counselor or coach, but together, and then come get help from us and then go back and work together.
Like in Schrubiner's movie, This Might Hurt, that kind of experience?
Kind of, yeah. Where we
Beautiful.
guide people how to work together. And then they have like a mastermind group once a week to get together, commit to an hour, and work with each other. And again, mastermind's all about support. Not you have to do this because I told you, or here's your homework. It's about I invite you to come in and do this work, and how can I support you in doing that work?
Fantastic. You see, out there in the internet world, there's so many options for support for people if they'll just take it. But the problem is the taking of it, isn't it? I mean, I think of all the people I know that have got no connection to that body experience, and can't actually move back and observe as though they were a drone looking down and seeing what is actually happening. So thank you, Matthew, for being one of those people. And thank you, Michael, for being one of those people. And thank you, Tova, for being one of those people.
And thank you, Rose.
Thank you, Rose.
Yeah, listen, go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, I know it's time to call it a day, but I just wanted to address Robbie Winterblack's comment there, which says, my sympathetic system relentlessly fires off during the night. On waking, engaging more pain. Anxiety escalates, so cycle amplifies. Find self-compassion impossible. And I just, I want to, if you read that, right, that's talking about just a constant state of crisis. And so what we want to do is try to think, how can we use some of these tools to move to situation? It's an uncomfortable situation. And I know it feels more than uncomfortable. It almost feels impossible. That's what comes through both in the energy and in the words. But if you hold that space that it's impossible, then it will be impossible. But some tips about nighttime is if you're having trouble sleeping, I think it's a really good idea to not try to sleep. Maybe you get up and you walk around for a minute. We talked before about how movement can be really important. If you feel stuck and you're like in this thing, when I have trouble sleeping, as soon as I recognize I've tossed and turned twice, I either sit up in bed and meditate for 5 minutes, or I get up and I walk around. And I don't just walk to the bathroom and go to the bathroom because that's habitual, but I'll go in the other room. I'll go sit in the living room for 5 minutes and sit there. I recognize that sometimes when the thinking patterns are going, because that's when you're not in control of them. The negative patterns start to fire because that's what they do to think. They think they're keeping you safe, right? So, and so then I get up and I,
No, it was, the internet froze, but you're here. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I would say I wouldn't get on my phone because that actually is a distraction. I would recognize, oh, I have an impulse to distract myself. Instead, I'm just going to go into my breath. If I have to, I'll just stand in the room and shake for a minute. Maybe I have my yoga mat on the floor. Maybe I'll do a couple downward dogs. Maybe I'll roll around on a lacrosse ball. Whatever it is you need to do to get back in your body instead of in your brain, those are tools you can do. And as you do it, you can remind yourself this isn't a crisis. It feels like a crisis in my body. It feels like a crisis, but that's a feeling. It's not a fact, right? There's not bombs dropping on the house. There's no one breaking in. So what can we do to remind ourselves that we're safe and okay? And you can do it through your breath. You can do it through your movement. You can do it through just the knowledge that it will get better. Because here's the really important tip. If you don't believe that there's a better possibility, you won't move towards that better possibility. Wow. And you also want to do it without the expectation that if you're not better in 5 minutes, that means you failed. It's the acceptance, one small step at a time, one small sit up in bed, and then you lay down and you realize, oh, I slept for an hour. Hot damn, look, this works. Take the small wins. I also notice for people who struggle, they won't take the wins. Like someone will go, oh, well, it seemed like you did a little bit better yesterday. And well, that's just the way you felt. I hit it from you better. No. I mean, I observed it, right? Take the wins. We all have to take the wins.
So
and if
true.
we don't take the wins, we won't take the belief. If we hold on to a belief that nothing will get better and that everything's bad, then we only feel safe with that. Like we think we're jinxing it if we accept that it was better for 10 minutes. Then we're going to jinx it. So we have to not allow ourselves to think it. Just really like be aware of what the thinking patterns bring. And I believe you can move through it.
And Robbie, please remember, I've been there too. I've been where you're at. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So does
yeah,
Mike.
The one thing I didn't get filmed was shitting in a bucket on my office floor because I literally couldn't sit up. Right. And that took help. So, and that was a month. So I've been there. It's no fun.
You can do this, but asking for help is very hard. And that will come with time.
No, but asking for help sometimes is not hard. It's really owning this work. It's
accepting the help as well.
It's accepting the help and believing. It's belief. It's belief. I mean, it's a new pathway being carved. That's just a raw way to say it, because your belief is that I'm not going to get better and I'm going to screw up and I'm going to fail. And it's like, it's neuroplasticity. It's like, it is science. We are changing, and change is so hard for a lot of us.
Let me just really quick respond to Robbie's response. He said, thanks, Michael. I do get up, I walk, and I do mindfulness meditations. I walk outside. It's the impossible belief and expectations. Okay, Robbie, but please reread what you said. I do get up and walk. That's a success. I do mindfulness meditation. That's a success. I walk outside. That's a success. Keep doing those. They will get better. It's slow. Believe me, I've been at this 18 years. I get you. After 3 years with Dr. Evans, I had an 8-month back pain episode. We get it. Build on those successes. You will do this. You will get there.
And I think they are recognizing that there is that impossible belief part that they need to move past. And so we all see that, and we you're going to be all right.
You also
it may
make
not feel like it in this moment, but you got
Robbie, I see it I'm getting help, and I'm also getting off of Valium. Again, not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but I would honestly invite you to question if today, this moment in time, is the right time to be getting off of Valium. I have been on antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs for 30 years. I finally got off Klonopin a couple years ago. Took a lot of time. I'm down to 30% of the antidepressant. It's taking time. Be gentle with yourself. Be aware of what's right to do in this moment.
Know yourself. Know yourself.
Isn't the right thing. Maybe it is, but just be curious about it.
It's a rose.
Right. It's kind of like Michael Pollan says, eat food, not too much, mostly vegetables, right? So it's the same thing, right? Like, push yourself without expectation, not too much. Like, you do have to push into the space of discomfort, but don't push so far, and recognize maybe when you push yourself too far. Like, that's been my problem. What I talked about, like doing every screening and doing the Q&A, like my body was telling me, dude, sit the fuck down. Like,
But you had a choice, and Robbie has a choice. Robbie has a choice.
Right.
Nobody forces us to do anything. Robbie has a choice.
Framing. That's what I'm saying. Right. We all have that choice. And a lot of times, without realizing it, our pattern is to push ourselves too far, and we don't even see it. So it's about being aware, like, what is that point? Like, where is pushing too far? And where is setting our expectations so high that there's no way we could achieve it, so then we think we're going to fail? Set a reasonable expectation, surpass it, set an but also be careful about expectation. It's like, set a reasonable goal, I think, is different than an expectation. I'm going to walk towards that tree, right? But if you say, I'm going to walk towards that tree within 2 minutes, that's an expectation. A goal is different than an expectation. I mean, we have to point in some direction, because that's the whole thing about acceptance, etc. But we can do things, but not be wedded to the result.
Excellent. Not be wedded to the result is the most important takeaway thing. Pardon?
Outcome independence.
Yep.
Right.
I used to hate that word because I didn't understand it. You just explained it beautifully.
Yeah.
Right. To the result.
I do have to go because I've got to travel tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, listen. Bless your heart.
Evening. Yeah.
Bless your heart. We're inviting you back, because this is just amazing information. Amazing. Toda rabah, thank you in Hebrew. Bless your hearts. See you soon. Have a good day. Good night, Rose. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.